Silverstone Classic rather, Jacky Ickx Trophy race. Andy Purdy with the Nissan, fastest race lap yesterday. Alongside him, Chris Buncombe, who won the race. Watch out for the Sauber Mercedes from the inside of row 2, storming through with its 1100 horsepower. Don't expect Gary Pearson on row 3 to be much of a slouch either in that XJR11 Jaguar. Going through, it's like a who's who of sports car racing. The smaller cars there in the midfield, and that Ford Roush as well, one of the very, very rare machine indeed. Neil Cunningham in the Ford C100, those two cars very closely related.
Yeah, they had a great fight yesterday. Kent Abrahamson is the one who's going to be driving it today. They're coming up for the start, John, a rolling start as in Group C days.
And no time to change drivers in this. This is just a blast to the checkered flag. Andy Purdy needs to be careful, he can't go too early. Can he outdrag that Jaguar? But watch out for the Silver Arrows coming down our left-hand side. Who gets a super start? Slotting into second position, surely. Yes, it will. And Justin Law is hunting around there as well. Fourth position at the moment. Oh, my goodness me. 3 wide going up towards Beckett's, and that could have been a very expensive moment.
Yeah, I have to say, Rob Sherrard, the Australian in that Mercedes, he's just really getting to grips in the car now. Second year he's had it, and he just loves this car. So much power, even more than Lewis Hamilton gets at curves.
Yes, and no batteries to worry about in that Silver Arrows. Everyone has taken the start, everyone's gone through safely, and already Andy Purdy is making good his escape. We saw this yesterday, but I think now with that Mercedes-Benz clear of the chasing pack of cats, and there are 3 of them in its wake at the moment. I just wonder if that Merc can actually keep the Nissan in sight.
Yeah, but this was not on the script. The Bud Light car leading the 2 Silk Cut Jaguars, that was just not what was scheduled today. Maybe overnight Don Law and his team have managed to find some... Yes, having a go down there. Oh, can't quite do it. But Don Law and his team obviously finding some... Well, he compromised his race, didn't he? Oh, and round they go. That's both the Jaguars delayed there. Oh, where's the third one gone?
Yeah, the third one must have checked right up as well in behind that, because it's gone. The second of the Silk Cut cars, the 4 car of Gary Pearson, is not to be seen. While Chris Buncombe came from a long way back there. He saw Justin Law trying to take second position, thought he might have an opportunity there. Wonder if they've flat spotted tyres as well.
Oh dear, what a mess that was. I have to say, I was at Harama.
And there it is, there's Pearson.
Yeah, so all 3 of those Jaguars, ex-factory Jaguars, off down at that end of the circuit. John, I was at Harama in 1986. The 3 factory cars took themselves out.
Almost a repeat of that, and there is the Mustang, the Roush Mustang going around as well. That was battling for class lead in the early race.
Much colder today, of course.
Much colder.
They're not getting heat into the tyres on these opening laps.
Paul Livesey's Spice, I am told, played a part at Peter Snowden's wedding. Got a text from Peter yesterday. Not entirely certain whether they were able to get man and wife in it before they left the church, but that 30 car was taking a starring role with Peter Snowden, one of the Amok commentators, and pretty decent historic racer himself. Now here is the recovering Chris Buncombe car coming up alongside that Porsche.
Yeah, David Hart has to move over to let him through. There's just no way he's going to hold him off. Even these Jaguars are getting 900 plus horsepower out of these V12s.
Here's Buncombe having a look. I think that was possibly being... well, I think he was coming from a little far back.
And then Pearson got involved, didn't come through. We didn't actually see what happened.
I think he just anchored up and lost it. Here's the Mustang going around. That was just a case, I think, of a little bit too much right foot. The tyres still possibly a little cold.
That's running out of Swedish talent. So Kent Abrahamson loving this car. I mean, as we told yesterday, if you're listening, the Ford C100 was the European version of Ford's Group C car. That, the Probe, which became the Mustang, was the American version. They're racing together yesterday. Wonderful. But look at this Nissan.
Andy Purdy picking up where he left off yesterday in this very quick R90C Nissan. Here is the battle slightly further back down the field for 3rd position, on board with Justin Law. Look at the eyes, look at the concentration. He's glancing in the right-hand mirror to see where his competition is coming from as he goes across the line in front of us. He's got 10 cars length on the Jaguar behind him as he turns in, and there is the battle behind as well, between the Spice and the Porsche.
Yeah, that's the Spice and the Porsche, and there's the Momo Nissan as well, the one we were talking about yesterday, GTP car. Again, a spinner there. That's the 30 car. That is the car of, where are we, Paul Livesey. That's his Spice, one of only two that should have been in the race. The other one, of course, Haddon's car, which is out with that cracked gearbox.
Very pretty colour scheme there. These cars, of course, as Mark's mentioned, as we'll just look at this battle, because I think, and Law has lost that position earlier on in the lap, so that is a change of position. He's dropped back one. He had a little look into Stowe corner there, the quick right-hander at the end of Hanger Straight.
Yeah, but Buncombe really is punishing those front tyres, isn't he? Big lock up into Stover.
Did it yesterday quite a lot as well, I noticed, and he must be absolutely steaming that he's let himself drop back. He was some 15 seconds away from the lead at the end of the last lap. He will have lost a little more time this time because Purdy is piling on the pressure. 140.8 for our leader last time around. These cars, no more. Great history, still fabulous entertainment, but some of the names that have driven these cars are absolute headliners.
Oh yes, indeed. I mean, Derek Warwick, we've got Martin Brundle, who's still very much active on in motorsport commentary, as we all know, and Eddie Cheever, all these sort of stars. But Andy Wallace in his time, 1988 winner, Johnny Dumfries, Jan Lammers, all these guys all went on to become superstars. They are superstars still today, and this is the car that gave them that break in motorsport.
There's the second position Mercedes-Benz. That was...
Buncombe's reeling him in, though.
Yeah. Was 5 seconds, but it's nowhere near that now. It's more like a second and a half as he goes across the line. And I'm still reeling at the thought that we might get a C11 Mercedes-Benz in this series in the not too distant future. That was the car that we're watching, the silver Mercedes, was my first Le Mans, 1989. That was the winning car, not that particular car. This was the sister car that campaigned throughout the season in the then World Sports Car Championship.
Yeah, and Simon Wright, who wants to buy... Oh, again, a lock-up there for Buncombe. He really is punishing those tyres. That C11 Simon Wright was talking about, that would be run by Ian Dawson if he got it down at Snetterton. Ian runs the Spice and that Porsche for him. And Ian, I was talking to this morning, just love to get his hands on a C11. Who wouldn't?
Down in the early teens, looking at some of the battles down the field there for a moment, but it's all happening at the front because Chris Buncombe has got the red mist. Made a slight mistake here at the end of the first lap. He's recovered well, kept the big engine running in the XJR9, and now Mercedes versus Jaguar heading towards Bridge. Oh, I get a tingle.
Here we are back in 1988, isn't it great?
Fantastic stuff.
Oh, I didn't. That was just coming. It's so obvious. Now can Chris haul in Andy Purdy. Purdy's problem yesterday had an intermittent cutout on that problem, the Nissan. They hope they've traced it now. That's why from time to time he suddenly fell back, went off at one stage, just didn't have the power when he needed it. But today, obviously, he's getting it sorted. 42, his best lap.
That was a lovely pass there. Took all the momentum through Bridge, and in fairness, it wasn't held off too much. That's the leader. Now, no radios. You know, the radio aerials are in these cars. I wonder if they are using radios, but the old-fashioned, in quotation marks, way of communicating to the driver is via the pit boards at the start-finish line. He's got the whole of the Hanger Straight and a little more. Some 17.3 seconds is the lead. So, can we?
We've got 27 minutes in which to do it. Now let's have a look at the times. Who's going quickly? 40 is Purdy's best lap, with 41 from Buncombe. But on that last lap, Buncombe was 0.4 of a second quicker. But so you cannot, 0.4 of a second is not at each lap is not going to haul him in 27 minutes.
There is the recovering 711 sponsored 17 car. That is Abramson, the Ford Roush. Just a different take on the whole project that Ford were looking at, and sad to say that really never took off in its day. There is the other side of it, the European side, if you like, the Ford C100, sharing a lot of the same components, slightly different bodywork, as you can see, and that car's struggling a little bit at the moment because it's been headed there by the 78, which is Andrew Smith in the C2 Spice, Henry, the Ford-powered car. And there's another car that's rather underperforming at the moment, the Kenwood Porsche, the number 10 car. Yeah,
that is the car we were talking about earlier of, excuse me, the car, that number 10 car, Simon Wright. That's the one the guy wants to replace that car with a C11. So let's see what happens.
A mere 650 horsepower in that car. I'm sorry, it's not enough. So across the line, Purdy's gone through, and 17 seconds has become 13.8 seconds, as Buncombe has taken almost 3.5 seconds out of the leader. Here is the other Porsche, the 39 car, the 962C. And this car really, with the From Air sponsorship, with the black on the on and around the engine cover and the driver area, looking very different from that Kenwood car.
Yeah, From A, incidentally, was the Japanese new man, hence the colours. So in those days, that was, if you want to get your clothing look smart, you went and bought From A from the Tokyo department store. So lapping already, catching up with Pat. And we've just seen Buncombe did a 40.7. He's equalled Purdy's best time, and he's hauling him in at a rate of knots.
So here at Silverstone, we've just over 23 minutes to go in the Group C sprint race, if you like, the Jacky Ickx Trophy. Two Group C races named for Jochen Mass and Jacky Ickx over the weekend, and I can't think of two better names to put on those trophies. That is Justin Law in the very unusual Jaguar. This car built in America, and you can see it was a very different way of thinking to the XJRs over here in Europe, and clearly Justin having to muscle that car rather harder than he would like to. Just getting to grips with this car. They've been looking after the car for the owner, Don Law Racing, good heavens, look how quick his hands are there, for quite some time. The owner's been racing it, and Justin Law, and yesterday Andy Wallace getting into the car as well to give it a run out and try and really get this car fettled. It's not quite realised its potential. You would probably have said the same for Imperial, actually, because it was a very short-lived experiment.
Yeah, just did that one race, the 1993 Daytona 24 Hours. It was built, as you say, by Tony Dow's operation, TWR North America. Very good input into that. And that car actually called the XJR 12D, D for Daytona. Interestingly, that From A Nissan we looked at, that only did one race as well, and that race too was the 93 Daytona 24 Hours.
Now here is the Paul Livesey Spice, the 30 car that we were talking about earlier on, that was part of Peter Snowden's wedding. Second in class at the moment. This is quite a rare car as well, one of the Musketeers.
Yep, that car was run at Le Mans in period 1991, 3 French drivers, and as you can see, still carrying its French signage from the day. A lot of local companies getting its car onto the track at Le Mans, still very proudly French.
And I noticed as well that an awful lot of these cars still have their Scrutineering stickers above the doors from the first year that they did Le Mans.
You have to have that. That is what gives your car provenance. That little panel with ACO 24 hours on it.
In fact, you can just see them there above the doors.
There's a nice story about that. I asked someone yesterday about their sticker. I said, it looks so brand new. He said, well, actually it is, because apparently there's a guy in France who, after each race, buys up all the stock of stickers and then, with the ACO's approval, sells them back to people who are restoring cars.
Very clever. Looking back down the hangar straight there, and heading towards us, the Ford C100, number 6 this weekend, with the very asymmetric cabin. Now here's a class leader, and this is Henry, the Ford-powered C2. And just look at that car, beautifully proportioned, but in the C2 category, so everything a little bit smaller. If anything, perhaps just the windscreen looking a little bit bulbous, but if you look at things like the Peugeot that won Le Mans this year, you'll see that that big glass area is something that is still being used. This is one of 3 named Spices, a Curicos. Henry because it's a Ford. We've also got Reggie Rover, and Pat because it was a Swift Air sponsored car, the red car, therefore Postman Pat.
That sounds Postman Pat and his black and white dog, isn't it? Andrew Smith then still leading in his class, won it yesterday in the C25. Oh dear, and this is the 39 car. This is the David Hart car, stopped yesterday as well, if you remember. And another car stopped on the other side of the track. That's the Jaguar in the pits.
Second time the Jaguar has been into the pits, and I think that is probably all she wrote for that car.
Oh dear, dear. Don Miles in enjoying this car. This is the first of the prototype Jaguars, wasn't it? The XJR5.
Oh, the spin! This is the second place car. Lost that, of course, a little earlier to Buncombe, so that is also losing third position, down to sixth already, and that, I'm afraid, was just too much right foot.
Yeah, but it's a strange place to spin, isn't it? Because it's not that much of a turn there. He just came up over the hill. Now, he had problems yesterday. They couldn't get the car restarted because of battery problems. He's obviously okay. He's trying to restart it. Yeah,
that is not a good place. He's just over the top of the brow there. He's got it restarted.
He must have lost a dozen places, I think, John. So,
well, I saw the 88 go through. So there is the leader putting a lap on the Ford C100, that trapezoidal windscreen for the C100. Remember, it was 17 seconds at about 23, 24 minutes, the gap between Purdy and Buncombe. It's now down to just over 9 seconds, and Purdy must be feeling the heat, although Buncombe's times, oh, look at the way comes through that right-hander there down at Club. That is awesome.
They're both trading 43s at the moment, so they're 3 seconds off their best pace.
Mark.
Yeah, there it is. He's coming, isn't he? He's just coming out of Club as the Nissan turned into farm.
Is that, or is that not a classic looking car?
Great.
Even now, if something like that rolled out onto the circuits of the American Le Mans Series, or the Le Mans Series, of course, next weekend going to Podium for the first time for a Saturday night race. Looking forward to that immensely.
Someone asked us this morning in the paddock, why can they still run Silk Cut when tobacco advertising is banned? The answer is very simple. The FI gives you a dispensation to run the cars in period livery. We've got the Derek Bell, Stefan Belloff, Rothman's Porsche 83 in the paddock as well. Someone said, why is it not Rothman's? It says racing. Because it was always banned in Germany from the start.
But the bizarre thing is you can't now buy a model of that car with Silk Cut on it anymore.
That's the problem.
Through goes 1-2-1, and now it drops to 7.3 seconds. So Buncombe, despite the traffic, has taken another 2.1 seconds. Sorry, 1.9 seconds. Hindhoff didn't do maths. It was Friday afternoon, double period. So he is closing in at a rate of knots that will put him onto the back of the leader before the end of the race. Now, as Murray Walker famously says, catching is one thing, passing is another. And there is Reggie, the 78 car, just ahead. Look at that. That takes you back to 88, 89 and 90 at Le Mans.
I wonder if Bobby Rahal notices that as well after his sojourn at Jaguar, Formula One, of course, now Red Bull. Anyway, Purdy, Buncombe, Law, Randall and Jamie Campbell-Water, that is our top 5 at the moment. We haven't seen much of Jamie, have we? In the 22 car, that is the very pretty little Courage, the 1991 Le Mans Courage. Hopefully we'll get a glimpse of that.
Buncombe is imperious through traffic, Mark, and that is where I think, for me, he's making up a lot of his time. Look at how hard he's pushing there. Lost the rear end of the car. Had to just come out of the throttle for a little bit, but got the car pointing in the right direction. Obviously learned his lesson from rotating there on the first lap, and he is inexorably running down the leader, Andy Purdy, in that Nissan now. Is he going to get some room as he goes past the Gebhardt there? Not quite.
Well, that Gebhardt got involved yesterday, didn't it, with Andrew Purdy, and so there was a lot of bad feeling afterwards about that. I have to say, from where we sat, Andy Purdy was quite innocent. The Gebhardt turned in on him, but that Gebhardt is now fixed, running again well. That's the AGA car from 1986. Again, very, very iconic car with that tail fin.
So held fast at 7.3, and that almost all, I would think, down to just that little spin. There's the third place car, Justin Law, and I think they'll be relatively pleased at Don Law Racing. Don, Justin's father, and Justin, I was going to say probably, there's no probably about it, are undoubtedly the foremost authorities on 220s, Jaguar XJ 220s.
Yeah, but you can see that car has still got some turning in problems. That's what their front was yesterday. The front was floating a lot, you know, as they tried getting understeer, and it's just a question of setting up. It's still a new car to this then. Just
look at the front end bouncing, and look at where Justin is looking as he's placing the car on the circuit. These are quite big cars. You forget about just the physical size of these cars, and it's not easy to see where you're putting the front corners. I've only ever driven one around the paddock at Donington Park, and just trying to manoeuvre it into a garage is very, very difficult indeed. And the thought of trying to place this car at 180, 185 miles an hour, then down through the gearbox here, turning in right-handed to stall before you drop down the hill. Well, I think I'd possibly like to have it to go, have a try at it, but I'm not sure I'd be very good.
John, just seeing them coming out of the Vale there, just to let you know, they're not using the chicane at the end of the Vale. They're actually, they're cutting the corner a bit earlier.
Yeah, that's
a good reason for it, isn't there?
Yeah.
Saved gearboxes on these older cars, clutches, etc.
And that is the classic configuration that was put in at Silverstone here a few years ago. And it, what it does do, though, as far as I'm concerned, is down at club, it makes the entry to club much quicker, and the cars are moving around much more, particularly the saloon cars and even these downforce Group C cars. Now, watch the eyes again as he'll look across into the apex on the left-hand side. Everything else he's doing, he's working the car, just feeling for grip there, Justin Law, inside the cockpit of that Bud Light sponsored XJ.
Yeah, he's very much at home in these cars. I mean, 4 or 5 years he's been driving these now. He's well within his comfort zone here. It's a new car to him, yes. It's only the second time they've had this out. They say by the end of the year they'll have this car sorted so well they will start winning next year.
Going past the Tiger GC 287 there.
Yeah, that's
Pitman car.
Isn't that great? Those Le Mans wheel spats at the back. I've just always loved that, and strobes on it to make the car look slightly longer, and it does look like a long-tail Porsche.
Well, Andy Purdy started pushing on 141.6 last time around. Bunkum 141.6, so the gap is remaining fairly static at 7.2. And there is the 39 car we saw earlier on with problems.
I think Andy Purdy's obviously got those problems put behind him. We haven't seen any slip from him. We haven't seen him slow at any time. He's still got fastest lap at the race at the moment of 40.5. The best from John Bunkum's of 40.7. They are bang on, absolutely level at the moment. 141.64, both of them on the last lap. So Andy knows where he is, and I think he's just keeping that buffer now.
Just over 12.5 minutes to run in the Jacky Ickx Trophy. The short dash here at Silverstone, the classic meeting. Traffic will undoubtedly play a part then in the last dozen minutes. Just a tenth taken out of the lead there by Chris Bunkum here in the 121, the glorious V12 Jaguar, the XJR9, which I am sure there are many people watching at home now here on Motors TV for whom sports car racing means that car and its either descendants or antecedents.
It was the Audi of its day, of course.
It was, absolutely.
And, that's where we are. But I think as we made the point yesterday, John, this probably everyone will remember as the golden age of sports car racing in 50 years' time, long after we've stopped commentating.
Well, you may say that. I'm hopefully still earning a crust. There's the leader again. You've got to give Andy Purdy his due. The way that he drives this car, which is a downforce car, of course, he does throw it around. He drives it with verve. Now, you can see there that the gap has come down visually as well, because it's now only the length of that straight from club up to farm. But Bunkum and his charge towards the front just slightly thwarted. You've got to wonder how much closer he would have been if he hadn't looped it on the first lap. Under bridge, through bridge and into the complex here. We now can look to our right and we'll get a quick flash of the iconic livery behind the British Racing Drivers Club building. Here's the leader.
No, second place.
Coming towards us. Excuse me, yes, I was looking out the window there. The Jaguar flag about to be seen. Oh, is it going to be waved? It is. Oh, how very Le Mans is that?
Good man.
Every time they go by in the tribunes opposite the pits at Le Mans, the flags come out for the different marks. Still happens now.
Andy Purdy will be starting to see this car in his mirrors on the straights, like Hangar Straight. He probably can't see him through the twisty bits, but this car really pushing. Now, remember, this car is one of the Nissan C90s that was developed by Nissan Motorsport Europe. They went to Japan, some of the cars, and this particular car was run by Hoshino Racing, Kazuyoshi Hoshino, who's Mr. Nissan, Mr. Motorsport in Japan. He developed that car further. That's why it's all short-tailed.
Nissan spent cubic yen, didn't they, trying to win Le Mans. The whole endurance ethic is massive in Japan, and yet of all the big Japanese companies that have been to Le Mans, Toyota and Nissan, it was Mazda, the smallest of them all in 1991, that are still the only Japanese manufacturer to have won that race.
That's why Nissan and others in Toyota gave up in the end. They thought if they're being beaten by Japan's smallest manufacturer, then, you know, what's the point of trying? And
stand by for Nissan to make a comeback. Now, that is a class-leading car. in the shape of the Ford C100 with that very, very distinctive looking windscreen shape from the front end. Look how narrow it gets at the top. This the sister or cousin car, if you like, to the Mustang that we looked at earlier. Never really a success in its time. Ford so desperately wanted to recapture the glory of the Ford GTs from the late 60s and 70s, and that car just didn't deliver it. However, here is a car that did have success in its time, albeit in the C2, the slightly smaller engine, the slower cars. And all of the engineering that went into the bigger cars had to go into these smaller cars. And the clever bit was, and we mentioned this in the earlier programme yesterday, but it's worth saying again, just how small the wheels are on those C2 cars. So the forces on those wheels are exaggerated. Now, we were talking about Mazda earlier on, Mark.
Pat Murphy comes in. This is the little Tiger Mazda, the car that raced at Le Mans in 1989, then went to Camel Lights. And that car, the 286.
The second place Jaguar of Chris Buncombe carving his way through traffic as he tries to get on terms with Andy Purdy, who leads this race with just over 6 minutes to go. The Jacky Ickx Trophy here at Silverstone, live on Motors TV, and Buncombe is taking no prisoners whatsoever as he comes through the traffic. The gap had gone back out to almost 8 seconds, but trimmed down last time around to under 7. I just think the time is running out, although that Jaguar supporter is urging Chris Buncombe on. There's the leader going through, and there is the gap to second place. Mark Cole, I think we're going to run out of laps and time before we get a real battle for the lead.
Yeah, 6.5 seconds. It's more or less stuck there, isn't it? It's just been hovering between 6.5 and 7. But this Nissan still pushing on. Absolutely no problem at all for Andy Purdy. He's had a perfect race so far. Still got 5.5 minutes of it to go. He must have that visual now in his mirrors when they go down Hanger Straight. He will see the Silk Cat closing in on him, claws out. Oh, there's Jamie Campbell-Water in the pits. We're just about to talk about the 22 Courage, weren't we? Ran at Le Mans in 1991.
Perfect example of a privateer designed and built sports car. That ethic continues today in the same part of the world, as of course, with Pescarolo, Andy's Courage.
Yeah, Jamie with Scottish helmet getting out. And here is the Gebhardt. This is the ADA Gebhardt, which Ian Harrower and Chris Crawford ran in period. And just a quick stop there, maybe some battery problems, I don't know. Have had a few battery changes over the weekend in these cars.
It was another Ford-powered car, wasn't it?
Yep, it was the Gebhardt Ford DB, again, DFC. Same engine that the little Ecosys ran in. And you were talking about the Ecosys earlier. You were saying that, the C2 being slower cars, but it's all relative, John. I went around Silverstone with David Leslie in period in one of these cars in the passenger seat, and it was more thrilling than being in a Porsche 962. That DFC just bangs in behind you all the time.
There is our leader, 6.5 seconds. Andy Purdy has had a relatively lonely race since he blasted that Nissan off the line some 30 minutes ago. Where is the Jaguar? That's the Mercedes-Benz, now down in 6th position.
Yeah, he had a spin, of course, lost a lot of time, didn't he? I think he has been lapped now, just been lapped, yeah.
Yeah, Buncombe going through, he's trimmed another half a second or so off the leader, but with just probably 2 laps to go, he's going to be ruining that slightly bold decision to try and take second position at the end of the first lap, which cost him, what, that was to cost him 10 or 15 seconds right there.
Yeah, yes, and the rest, I think, he couldn't get it restarted for a while, remember, so it's... anyway, there we are, closing in down on that Mercedes. The Mercedes, remember, we're hearing 1,100 horsepower available under his right foot. Silk Cut Jaguar, oh, it's no problem. I think Rob just looked in his mirror and said, go, please go. Leave me alone, I'm enjoying my race.
I do like this configuration with the faster run into this corner here at Club with the cutout, the classic version of the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. It is not only much kinder on the machinery for all the cars, but it does give a much better spectacle as well. Back to the Ford C100 there in the yellow and green with the Ford Motorsport stripes. The Gebhardt's back out as well, as we saw earlier, so a couple of Ford-powered cars there. And back to what was just about to become a Ford mark when this car was running in 88. And the reason, of course, that we lost Aston Martin from Group C was that that Ford didn't want to run two competing marks in the same race series, and that was a bit of a shame because the AMR1 had proved the concept, and the evolution of that car never got to race.
Yeah, that's right. It just rather stalled in it. Victor Gauntlet was at the helm in those days, wasn't he? So John Egan was chairman of Jaguar then. Look at that. He has just taken another bite out of him. But, John, I think that's purely traffic because our race leader, there we are, he's had 2 or 3 cars to work through. That's nearly put him off. He's going to hold his line. Oh, that was so tight. I think that's another second loss.
Well, the problem is, of course, you're leading any race. You're the first person to come on the traffic. The blue flags will be out there from the marshals. The second place man, well, when the leader's already been through, at least the back markers, or in this case the midfield runners, are a little more used to seeing it. The other thing is that the Nissan, and I noticed this yesterday, doesn't have any headlights that it can shine coming up to the back markers, whereas you see quite clearly there, Chris Buncombe's got the running lights on the Jaguar, and that does just catch the eye in the mirror, whereas the Nissan, everything is nice and smooth around the front end in sprint specification, and there's nothing to flash or to turn on, although it's not exactly the most shy coloured of cars, is it?
Very good point there, very good point. Of course, that car was built for the Japanese Group C series, which were all daylight races, apart from the Suzuka 1,000 kilometres, when of course you changed everything, you put lights on, and
correct, different front end.
But look at the gap now, it's come right down now, and I think Chris Buncombe will be able to see that yellow car not that far ahead of him now, but he's only going to have another lap, 2 laps, isn't he, to get that in. They're going to cross the line, and that will be the penultimate lap.
As they come round this time, I have a feeling that the finger will be held out in the nicest possible way for Andy Purdy, and indeed it is. It is, right. He goes on to his last lap now, and what's the gap? Buncombe's been held up, has he? Oh, it's still just under 5 seconds, 4.7. So Buncombe's got to drive the lap of his life here and hope that Purdy gets held up. There is traffic in the shape of the 78, of course, ahead of him, and there is the Jaguar. That's the gap between second and first. The yellow car going past the little white car in the foreground. There's the second car. Oh, Chris must almost taste this. Now these big Group C cars stretch their legs. Yeah,
I'm afraid Henry didn't help him at all there, did he? Because he changed his line halfway through that corner. But I think it's still too big a river for this Jaguar to cross now, because they're going into the last half of the lap.
Looks like it's going to be honours even for Jaguar and Nissan this weekend in the 2 Group C races, as through goes the 9th, 8th, 9th and 10th battle.
Yep. Nice fight going on here. Yeah, this is very good. Livesey in the middle of that bunch in the number 30 car. In fact, it's a 6th place fight, this, isn't it? This is 7th place, 6th place, Livesey, Smith, Cunningham. They're all, and Abrahamson, all caught up with each other.
6th through to 10th, yeah, they are absolutely together after 35 minutes. We had this yesterday after an hour. But here is Andy Purdy coming around. He's clearly got the quickest car here. Yesterday wasn't quite savvy enough to turn that into a victory. He's done it today. He's just pacing himself round to the end of the race.
Yeah, and this man, of course, won this race here 2 years ago in Richard Lloyd's car, his Porsche 962. He does it now, a different car. So Nissan takes the checkered flag. Great win for young Andy Purdy.
And there is Buncombe coming through in seconds, 2.5 seconds, and Buncombe must be kicking himself about that rather brave manoeuvre. That is 5th place, 4th place make that. The Mercedes-Benz making up a position on the last lap at the expense of the 88 car, the Dick Randall Nissan.
Yep, so last he clawed something back. I think Rob Sherrill will kick himself for that spin, but he'll be pleased with that result. But even more pleased, of course, Andy Purdy and Justin Law. Good race for him. What he's done, of course, is beaten Gary Pearson, which is something this is all about. It's always been Don Law against JD, but we've still got fighting going on out in the track, John.
Yeah, this is Abramson and Wright together, and they are battling for position at the bottom end of the top 10. The Mustang and the Porsche, and I think it's going to go the way of the blue oval. Yes, it is, as the Roush-powered car comes across the line. Great to see that car in the UK.
Oh, wonderful, isn't it? Simon Wright comes across the line then. Simon, of course, who's just had that young son, Sebastian, again. Well done. That's Daddy you're watching on TV, Sebastian, and Rebecca, well done.
Third place car going through at the end of the start-finish straight there. That's Justin Law, and you know what? I think he'll be really pleased with that, and so will his dad, Dom, because that is a pretty new car to them. Although they've been looking after the car, they haven't really raced it before. And
well, he's on the podium, and he's second Jaguar. Yesterday they were third Jaguar, so it's already a move up. So they are beginning to understand how this car works.
And well done to Neil Cunningham, by the way, the C100, who won his class, the 78 Spice as well, the Ickx car. That was a class winner.
Yeah, that was a nice drive again, and of course Abrahamson beat him yesterday, so they swapped round. Cunningham just taking that. So
there's the top 10, and the figure in brackets is the class. So Andy Purdy wins the race in class, Chris Bunkum second and takes his position, although I think he may have wanted to stand on the top step of the podium overall. Paul Livesey there taking the win, taking second place rather in class 2. Andrew Smith in the Ickx confirmed as winning class 4. And that was ahead of quite a few other cars of the Ickx mark as well. Simon Wright rounding up the top 10 in that 962 Porsche.
Well, another good Group C race. They continue to thrill the crowds here, and I think fastest cars here this weekend, but also anyone you talk to in the crowds, they still love and adore these cars because they're so relevant still to sports car racing, John.
Well, you can see all the design cues, can't you? If you squint just a little bit there at the Jaguar or even at the Nissan, you could see Peugeot or Lola Aston Martin. The guys were getting to grips with aero and with how the cars were cutting through the air at 200 miles an hour plus in the certainly late 80s and the early 90s. The black art of aerodynamics was beginning to be understood. Well, congratulations for Andy Purdy, very well deserved. And you know what, he doesn't have the good grace of even looking tired there, does he?
Well, he's only 24. I mean, yesterday you said you talked about Chris Bunkum saying he's too young to have a car. He's 31. This guy's only 24.
So the Jacky Ickx Trophy goes to Nissan and to Chris Bunkum here at Silverstone Classic 2009.
Bloody awesome. Really good job.
Don't let it after you.